So this 36-page report that was released by the House Oversight Committee yesterday and its chairman, Representative Jim Comer from Kentucky, that documents more than $10 million in foreign money that flowed into some 20 shell companies and LLCs created by the Bidens. It's sort of bizarre. I mean, it's not that bizarre, but all these companies that were just used to shuffle money around, I guess, to disguise the full distributions to all the beneficiaries. So that's one issue. Again, this is evidence that comes from subpoenaed bank records, 170 some suspicious activity reports, electronic transactions that were flagged by banks, sent to the criminal division of the Treasury Department that the Biden administration had been refusing to disclose. Subpoena power matters. And then the timing of some of these transactions. We mentioned yesterday a first read on this when it had just been released. He goes to Romania. This is, by the way, this is occurring while he's a sitting vice president.
Right.
He goes to Romania, talks about partnering on anti-corruption initiatives. He leaves Romania. Then Romania and a Romanian businessman later convicted of bribery in his home country. Money starts flowing from that businessman to Hunter Biden for 2 years shortly after Biden's visit to Romania in 2015. And we have the same situation going on in China with CEFC, this energy concern that Hunter Biden was involved in. Tony Bobulinski, who broke bad on the Bidens back before the 20 election, raised the specter of this and that the big guy was involved. So there's all this swirl and all this money flowing into all these companies and being distributed to all these Bidens, and the big guy, Mr. 10%, knows nothing about it.
Bull jive. And that's not even counting the millions from Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Mexico.
Jason Chaffetz, former Utah congressman, now Fox News contributor, he invoked the T word in describing his reaction to the details in this report.
This is corruption at the highest level to not only enrich the Biden family en masse, but it's also corruption that is an intelligence security risk for the United States of America. If you look at the money and the ties, particularly in China, we're talking about people with direct ties to the highest levels of the Chinese government, where Hunter Biden is involved and engaged in securing, for instance, one of the biggest cobalt mines in the world. So Joe Biden goes with Hunter Biden to China in 2013, and less than 2 weeks after they returned from that trip, suddenly Hunter Biden gets all of this money? Are you kidding me? I mean, what other evidence do we need of treason and of these types of things?
For more on this, please be joined by Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, contributing editor at National Review, and author of Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Great to be with you guys.
Treason, Andy?
Well, look, I think there's rhetorical treason and then there's legal treason, right? I happened to be on Fox with Jason when he said that, and they never swung it back to me. But
here's your chance.
Yeah, relive the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So treason's the only crime that's actually defined in the Constitution, and this is not treason. It's terrible. It's awful. It's a lot of bad things. I think I would have credited Jason with making a rhetorical point that was accurate in that Biden is colluding with a hostile foreign power again, and reaping a lot of profit from it. And I think it calls into question a lot of Biden policies, which have been very China-friendly under circumstances where they're obviously our most important geopolitical rival. But it's, to charge someone with treason, you have to show that they're aiding the enemy. We're not at war with China. So legally, the point is not. I guess what I ought to say is that legally, it's not. The legality of it is not the most important thing here. The important thing is when Barack Obama put Joe Biden as the point man of American foreign policy with respect to various countries. Why is it that people who were connected to the regimes of those countries believed it was in their interest to pay the Biden family millions of dollars? And the importance, I think, of what the House is exposing. Actually, the tragedy of this is that I'm glad the House is doing what they're doing, but a lot of us were writing this 2 years ago and more. So it's not like this information wasn't out there. Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson did a great job with the information that was available to them. As Dan just said, subpoena power matters, and Comer now has it, so the investigation is advancing. But we've known about this scheme for a very long time. In fact, when the New York Post information came out right before the election, all that mainly did, even though that was very important reporting, was corroborate things that were already known about the Biden family, which go back a long time. And yet the public is just seemingly waking up to this stuff.
I mean, these were bribes paid to the family because there was no business done in Mexico, in Ukraine, in China. Or am I missing something?
No, you're right. Look, when millions of dollars change hands in legitimate business, you can always identify an asset, some kind of commodity that changed hands. Here, the only thing that even approaches a commodity is access to Joe Biden and his political influence. There is nothing else. I mean, there's no concrete commodity or asset that's changing hands like you do in legitimate business. And the other thing is, because legitimate business is legitimate, you don't have to carve up one transaction into, 10 money transfers, and you don't have to have 17 or however many LLCs it is going at the same time. You don't have to have all kinds of, labyrinthine webs of bank transfers and money transfers. You don't get 170 suspicious activity reports generated by banks. You don't get that stuff because no matter how much money is involved, it's easy to see that money went one way and some commodity of value went the other way.
Right.
Here, there's no commodity, so the reason they have to break this all up is to conceal the fact that it's happening. So, for example, if you're going to bribe somebody with $1.5 million, that's going to look very bad if it's just like $1.5 million is changing hands and nothing of value is going back the other way. So what do? You try to cut it up into 30 different transactions, and the money goes to, instead of going to one Biden, it goes to 3 Bidens or 5 Bidens or however
9.
Yeah.
That's
right.
And you
So
try to make, ultimately 9, right?
Well, so yeah, but maybe I haven't updated myself on the criminal code. Is bribing a public official, is that still a crime?
It is. It's not an easy crime to prove and they've made it a very hard crime to prove. Let's remember, Dan, that the people who are on the receiving end of the bribes are the same people who write the laws. So,
yeah, I get it.
They've written them in a way that makes it hard. You generally have to show a quid pro quo, and it's hard, to do that in a bribery case where you're buying. I think a lot of people who paid the Bidens were buying like insurance more than I want that cobalt mine tomorrow. That's not the way they do business, right?
I hear you, but I mean, if
Joe Biden.
But if you're a prosecutor and you see there's no business, so you're just buying Biden family members, then once you start to like what Comer has started to do, I'm not saying that there's a smoking gun here with any sort of criminal prosecution, or even getting to the level of impeachment yet, but I think it's going there, and it could go there pretty quickly. I mean, as a prosecutor, once you say, well, let's look at the timelines. Let's look at Joe Biden comes here and he says this, and the United States government moves in this direction policy wise, and then money flows. And let's enlist some of these payers to explain what they were paying for. I mean, isn't that sort of a straightforward next step sort of piece of this investigation?
That's one of them. I mean, what you just laid out sounds great. The problem is that the middle piece that you identified there, where you said, United States policy changes in a particular direction, that's what they're weak on at the moment. They haven't been able to show like precisely how American policy went in a certain direction. And I think that's a hard part of it from a criminal standpoint, because what a lot of this is like, you're buying Joe Biden so he puts the thumb on the scale for you when it's necessary at some point, which
Right.
is not as easy as, I give you this and you give me that, right? It's quid pro quo. I think also the House is making a mistake, in my mind, by emphasizing the money that came in while he was a sitting vice president. That's important, but when he wasn't a sitting vice president, he was running for president. So if you were investing in him in like 2017, 2018, you were hoping to be paid off in the future. So it's not to me any better that, for Biden, that he happens to have been out of office and planning to run for president while a lot of this other money came in. I think it's impeachable now because this is the thing that the framers were most worried about, which was that foreign powers purchased the presidency and used the awesome powers of it for the interests of the foreign power against the interests of the American people. That's what the framers were worried about.
Right.
Plus, it doesn't matter if it's a crime in order to be impeachable. But let me say one other thing. Here's what Mueller did with Manafort. He said he should have registered as a foreign agent, and he didn't. Therefore, all the money that came in was criminal. So every time they put it through an account or changed the form of it or bought an asset with it, he considered that money laundering. And that was the theory on which the Justice Department, through Mueller, went after Manafort. And if that's the template for how the Justice Department looks at this kind of thing, I don't see how that doesn't apply here.
Right, and then wouldn't you potentially have the big guy, that would be Mr. 10%, Joe Biden, in the crosshairs, because if he benefits, even if money doesn't go directly to his account, if he benefits because money that Hunter Biden gets from Chinese communists or corrupt Romanian businessmen or Ukrainian oligarchs is used to pay Joe Biden's personal bills, well, then he's benefiting. He's part of the scheme.
Yeah. This is my point, Dan, is bribery is hard to prove in the criminal context. That doesn't mean they shouldn't try to prove it, but it's hard. In the meantime, it's kind of secondary because as far as our constitutional law is concerned, and political accountability, political power is a benefit. Bribery, you're talking about someone's right to liberty. The reason it's a high standard is we're talking about prosecuting them and putting them in prison. There's a lower standard that's involved when you're talking about the benefit of political power, which is if you use it abusively, if you allow it to be sold to foreign powers, it should be taken away from you. Whether we can also prosecute you and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you've taken bribes is interesting, but secondary. I think the important thing is to lay out what did these countries think they were paying for here? And the only thing obvious to anyone is that it was access and political influence.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I want to get your opinion on another legal matter, and that's the Jordan Neely case in New York City and the investigation into this Marine that put him in a chokehold to subdue him until police could arrive, had help from other passengers because this homeless man was behaving erratically and making threats and so on and so forth. What you think about the potential charging of that Marine. And this comes on the backdrop of Daniel Perry in Texas getting a 25-year sentence for, I would argue, defending himself against a Black Lives Matter protester who walked up to his car with an AR-15 back a couple of years ago. This whole situation where this lawlessness is occurring on public transit, in our urban centers, generally speaking, and then people are put in positions they don't want to be put in to try to defend themselves, and then they potentially face prosecution.
Yeah, I think if you're a prosecutor, you have to think of two things in these situations, which are unfortunately becoming more common as we do as the left makes it harder for police to do policing. People are being put in the position of defending themselves because we're under policed and we have too many people who belong in prison who are on the streets. So that's a toxic combination. If you're the prosecutor, you have to think, number one, technically speaking, do I have a legal crime here or not? And secondly, any crime I charge has to be proved in a jury trial. And I think the second one in the Neely situation is probably more important. So as far as whether you have an offense or not, the law is that you're allowed to use self-defense in a situation where either you or a third person is threatened. Your use of force can be superior to what's inflicted against you, but it has to be reasonable. And if at some point it becomes unreasonable and somebody dies, you can be charged with manslaughter over it. So even an altercation that begins legitimately, in other words, this Marine uses force to subdue this guy who is a threat to people, including himself, you're allowed to do that. But if you continue to use too much force after the person has already been subdued and the person dies, that could be negligent homicide, which is manslaughter.
Would you charge the case?
But the other point is, no, because I think that you charge it in the, you're going to get a jury of 12 New Yorkers who ride the subway, and they know what a hellscape that's become. And if you look at the video of what happened here, the people who were around this guy were very supportive. Some of them even helped him subdue, I'm talking about the Marine now, they helped him subdue Neely because Neely was such a threat. You're not going to get 12 people unanimously to convict a guy under circumstances where half of them are going to be saying to themselves, if I were on the subway, I wish I was courageous enough to do what he did. And the other half of them are going to say, if I'm on the subway, I hope I have somebody like him on the car with me. When the bad stuff starts to happen, because the bad stuff is happening all the time in the subway.
He is Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, contributing editor in National Review, of course, nationalreview.com, author of Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning